It's an absolute privilege to present my report this evening. When we formed an administration in May, I set officers a very clear direction. We're going to tackle mediocrity in public services because the public deserve the very best. We need to show leadership as a council. In a system where schools are rightly more independent than ever before as academies, we need to make use of the fact that while we no longer have direct control, our influence, our opportunities and our responsibilities are greater than ever before. We need to challenge bad public services. In areas where we have under-doctored communities or simply communities that are poorly served, we need to be robust in holding providers to account. By doing that, we will also raise the expectations of the people of Thurrock in terms of what they deserve from their public services. And we need to give a new focus to early years care. We need to bridge the gap between education and health to make sure that we tackle some of these intergenerational issues that see poor education outcomes begin poor health outcomes. Simply, we need to make sure we're preparing children who are fit for adulthood. Madam Mayor, I'll touch on a few headline issues before opening up for questions. Firstly, in health, the Sustainability Transformation Plans, the STPs, are the big thing. It's a scheme to address the wider financial sustainability of the entire healthcare system, from GPs all the way up to hospitals. Thurrock has two clear policy positions on the issue. Firstly, it cannot just be about acute hospitals. You cannot fix issues in hospitals without addressing poor primary care. Secondly, we want to cooperate with partners in South Essex. We share infrastructure, we share health facilities, and we share very similar demographics. Anything wider would be unmanageable. We will not be absorbed into a county-based system. It would be an old PCT in all but name. We've got our own CCG, we've got our own council. We know our population and the health needs better than anyone else. We must not allow local determination to be undermined. Secondly, on the health agenda, let's talk about GPs. The virtual collapse of primary care in Tilbury over the last few years is not just a crisis for Tilbury, it's a warning for the entire system. We need to hold poor examples of primary care to account. I did this in opposition when I questioned, for example, why the chairman of our CCG had such an appalling record at serving those learning disability checks, and I'm doing the same thing now in administration by putting the structures in place to hold these inadequate systems to account. The Cabinet will soon see a paper with a scorecard that has comprehensive data based on the individual needs of certain communities. This will be used to hold people's feet to the fire. Also, we will work with partners to help train patient liaison groups, the GP equivalent of school governors, who will also lend strings to our bow. And Madam Mayor, let me turn to education. We've got pressure in the school system in terms of places. That's why I've set up a lobby unit within the department, chaired by myself, that is looking at areas where we need to put political pressure on the Department of Education or the Education Funding Agency to ensure that we are delivering the free schools and the additional resources we need. But the quantity of places is not what parents tell me they're concerned about, it's the quality. We want more excellent academies and free schools here in Thurrock. And that's why this administration will maintain these strategic education functions we have within the council to be a critical friend to schools, but also help to grow our network of multi-academy trusts where schools are supporting each other and pooling their best talents. And finally, Madam Mayor, let me talk about the real purpose of my joint portfolio, the linking of health and education services. We need to bring social workers, medical workers and teachers to Thurrock, and we need to bring them here to stay. That's why, in consultation with the Cabinet for Regeneration, this year we'll be bringing forward plans for Thurrock's very own key worker housing to the Cabinet. Secondly, let's consider the redesign of our children's centres. Silo mentality cannot serve anyone. That is why we'll be looking at where we can bring health, employment and early years provision together in children's centres in strategic locations to serve local needs. And finally, Madam Mayor, let me turn to the visits that I've undertaken. When you have a portfolio that is outward-facing, relationship management is vital. In the 63 days that the administration has been in office, I've conducted around 25 formal visits and meetings with various partners, from Bowson Hospital, where I was last Saturday evening to talk to the doctors about how they are dealing with capacity and demand, to Treetops, where I was a fortnight ago, to talk to the head teacher and meet some remarkable students in our special needs school. On average, that means I'm giving personal time to these groups at least once every 3 days. I think that that is a robust record and it's one I'm very keen to build on. Madam Mayor, this is an exciting hectic and complex job, and one I absolutely relish. I'm happy to open to questions.
Thank you for your report, Councillor Howden. You mentioned the scorecard. Just wondering, what authority would these cards have? Like, why would GPs sign up to them? And what's your timeline for when you think things will improve?
What we saw in education is when you hold poor providers to account and support good providers, you get that osmosis relationship. Peer pressure will make a large part of this. The point of the Health and Wellbeing Board is that we can use this data to constantly drive that improvement. So you'll have other GPs, you'll have other partners in the industry. There's a great deal of pressure on A&E at Basel Hospital because some people don't have access to good primary care. So when you get all these partners around the table and you give them comprehensive data about what the community needs, why health inequalities are specifically the way they are in Tilbury, you'll get other partners putting pressure on their own colleagues saying, you've got to improve your act, otherwise we are going to continue to see these pressures. So it's a combination of nurturing that relationship, and also, it is a carrot and stick relationship. I will not be naming and shaming people when it's required. And certainly if you've got individual concerns with individual surgeries, I met with 2 of the members who represent AV and Uplands last week. I'm more than happy to meet other members to address their concerns if they wish.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and to welcome Councillor Hawden, I guess, to the role first of all. I know it's something that he's hugely passionate about, and I think many of us in this chamber share that passion in terms of making sure that our young people do well in education, in the set-up for life, and indeed around healthcare of our citizens. Madam Mayor, in opposition, he said there was a much reduced role for local education authorities post-academies. Does he still think the education budget can be radically cut?
Madam Mayor, he was the portfolio holder who said we're on our way up when we had the third worst access to good primary schools in the nation. He was the portfolio holder who said that we have excellent relationships with our schools, and then the Education Commission said schools trust our ability to plan. He was the portfolio holder who told us that everything was rosy, and virtually the rendition of "Don't worry, be happy" every time I questioned him. So the fact that he's
yes or no?
Now we've factored it was quite interesting. Well, first of all, the relationship does have to change. When he was the portfolio holder, he spent money like a Baldwin King. Clearly, that wasn't appropriate. It's about nurturing a relationship. The reason I set up this lobbying unit is because I went to Gateway Academy and during my first week as portfolio holder, listened to what their plans were in regards to the old manor school, something he failed to deal with when he was the portfolio holder. Listen to how they want a new free school to expand the provision to ensure that children can go from nursery age to sixth form in a thorough system. It's those areas where they need political support. They don't need money chucked at them. They don't need politicians bogarting money in the chamber when that money should rightfully be in the schools. So I don't think Councillor Gerrish is in a position to lecture me.
I don't really know how to follow that, man.
Try.
Basically, I just want to congratulate the portfolio holder for Education and Health, Councillor Holden. I thought it was a very good report. It's very in-depth, and you can, and apart from reading the report, you can feel the passion that he has for this role. I know for a fact he's always shown great interest in this subject, so good luck to him for the future. And as you can see so far, he's been a very busy chap. I'm concerned, well, I've got 2 questions, Madam Mayor, if you don't mind, and one's on health and one's on education, so he covers both, so if you don't mind. I'm a bit concerned, Councillor Holden, is that I'll be making enough provision now for secondary schools. Now, I'm going to use what I know as an example, is that, for instance, senior children at East Tilbury, they have to travel to St Clair's School, and as we all know, there's big developments down at East Tilbury, so there's going to be a resource that's going to be needed, more so. Apart from that, we've got the Butts Lane development, so next door to St Clair's. So I'm a bit concerned that we aren't covering all angles for the future for senior schools. My other question is on page 81, and that's on health. We'd like to go up there. Can I find it? That is. Is it 81? I don't know. And basically, it's about the monies that it's 85, sorry. We know that Thurrock has a high obesity rate. And yet, if you look down the expenditure that's being, you can see obesity adults, 51,000, obesity children, 205, up against drug misuse, alcohol misuse, drug and alcohol misuse. I don't think this is a lot of money for an issue that is quite high in the borough, and I just wonder if there's any way in which you can address that. And because after all said and done, obesity is an illness, and it's one that really should be tackled at children, young age.
Thank you very much for your kind words. First of all, in terms of secondary school provision, the reason my lobby unit is in place is to look holistically at the entire school system, to look at where there are genuine pressures and how we can use our leadership function to bring schools together and look at where we need to plan forward. I'm supporting the preschool bid of William Edwards. They're an outstanding school, they are excellently led and they should be expanding. And because they're also a specialist sports provider, that is excellent new provision, which should be expanding. In Hasselbrook, the reason I'm supporting Gabriel Hall's effort, the governors at Gabriel Hall have been outstanding at supporting Hasselbrook, is because obviously they're massively under role at the moment. With the improvement of school, obviously that role will increase. So we are actually looking at how we can help schools build that new provision we need. You are correct, we do need the provision. The report does point out we are seeing bulges in primary that will eventually feed into secondary. So you are right, we are doing it. In terms of, I knew someone was going to ask me about weight management. There is a marketed shift in my department from adults to children. That's because, as you know, Councillor Jones, if you nip these issues in the bud when they're young, it's far easier to manage it in the future. The redesign of the children's centres, the reason I have this joint portfolio is to look at children's centres, issues like children's centres, and bring together these strands where education and health meet, and previously they've always behaved in separate silos. You deal with education, you deal with obesity, you deal with onset medical issues as children get older. So it's the redesign of that service to ensure that children have that wraparound care. They don't just get basic numeracy supports if they're struggling in maths. The system will be able to look at them in a far more holistic way and actually cater for their individual needs. But certainly if you've got concerns about your own ward, I'm always more than happy to meet with you, Councillor.
Councillor Watkins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, obviously, to the portfolio for the excellent report. Can the Cabinet Member inform me and update me, please, of the performance of the schools in my ward?
Thank you, Councillor Watkins. Obviously, most of the results at the moment are provisional, but off the top of my head, in your ward, Corringham Primary obviously was a school that has struggled in recent years. Gabriel Hall made it part of its own academy trust, and the rebound has been remarkable. The staff at Corringham Primary, working in tandem with Gabriel Hall, have been absolutely phenomenal. It's a huge turnaround. It's a clear example where you can use multi-academy trusts to ensure that that transition from year 6 in primary to year 7 in secondary is as smooth as possible. So the future is looking very bright, and I'm absolutely delighted now that the Stanton Corringham Sixth Form is now supporting Hasselbrook, and people should be very grateful for the governors at both Gabriel Hall and Hasselbrook for making these very pragmatic moves.
Councillor Finch.
Issues that I was dealing with when I was the portfolio for health seemingly in my time were intractable, but you seem to think that you've got answers to them. And one particular I'm thinking of is health checks for people with learning disabilities. You're talking about holding the CCG's feet to the
The
fire.
fact that when it comes to the historic problem of GPs applying for the monies to carry out learning disability checks and not doing them, that is disgraceful, it is abhorrent, and they need to be told that. So that's the first strand of the argument, they need to be told that. As I said when I answered Councillor Holloway's question, is by using this scorecard in a data-driven way to put that peer pressure on each other to help them improve. But the reason we're putting so much work into things like the STP is because if the council can provide clear input and clear leadership into how the whole system needs to change from primary care up to acute hospital care, we can make the entire system far smoother. That will help us get functions out of hospitals that frankly no longer need to be there because of advancing technology, and help integrate them into these healthy living hubs that we're going to deliver, into rebound children's centres, etc. So making the whole system far more seamless, because as I'm sure you know, that if you're living with a learning disability, your primary port of access might not always be a GP. We need to make sure that these services are accessible as possible, and that means
With a lack of GPs, GP recruitment and GP retention. We were just recently contacted, myself, Councillor Aikman and Councillor Smith, by the medical centre who said in the last 12 months they lost 4 GPs. So I welcome the talk of incentivising GPs to come here through key worker housing, but can you put a bit more flesh on the bone with that? How long do you think it would be before we saw that, and what sort of tenure would we be talking about for the housing?
the head teacher at William Edwards, he showed me the sort of key worker housing he is using on the William Edwards site and how that has massively aided teacher retention. We haven't got the final idea on paper in terms of key worker housing. That will be something that will be shared with Open Scrutiny at the time, so I can assure him he will get to feed in with that. In terms of actually delivering these issues, obviously he knows that the Director of Public Health did commission a very large piece of work that has led to the design of the integrated health living hubs, one of which will service perfectly Ockenden and his Open Uplandsea. One of the things that myself and the Cabinet for Regeneration have been doing is ensuring there is a borough-wide delivery map, because we need to stop talking about strategies, we need to actually get them done. When we've said we're going to build something, we need to get it built. When we've said we're going to commission something, we need to get it commissioned. So very much we are focusing on actual delivery. That work is ongoing, and as I met with him the other day, I'm always more than happy to meet with him and his fellow ward members.
And you are right that parents value quality, but we have to also accept that quantity is rather important as well. So I just wonder how you, as a portfolio holder, can guarantee that the many multi-academy trusts that we have in the borough will make sure that school places are provided in places where they're needed and not in places where there's already a surplus.
The honest answer is, looking at the data projections, there aren't going to be a huge amount of areas with surpluses anyway. But it does come back to that relationship management. The reason I have run all over the shop and met with Gateway Academy, I'm meeting with Harris in August, and the other main multi-academy trusts I've already met, the reason I'm managing those relationships is to make sure that there's that free flow of information between the council and the schools and the providers, and most importantly, obviously, providing that personal political leadership, that sometimes they don't just want never-ending conversation, they actually want a conversation with someone who can actually instruct some degree of action. So I think it's very much about those personal relationships, and I hope my report gives you a flavour, but I'm investing a great deal of time in
look further if I can. As Councillor Holden knows, the Council has long been in dialogue and supporting Harris bid for a free school in the west of the borough. But this evening, the portfolio holder will also be supporting the Gateway bid for a free school in the Tilbury area, and the South West Essex Community Education Trust bid to build a free school on Blackshot playing fields. If this is done in an unfettered way, it will undoubtedly lead to pressure being put on some schools and could lead to the closure of schools. How is the portfolio holder going?
First of all, speculation about closure of schools is not helpful. Adding a degree of fear into the conversation is never useful. The honest answer is that you work in a data-driven way, you lobby for those who need support, and you give parents a choice. You give them a choice in the system to send their child to the school that makes the most sense. Gateway are intervening in some very challenging communities, in areas where they've taken over schools like the Old Man School, which was failing children, and they have my full unflinching support. William Edwards is an outstanding school, is outstandingly led. When I discussed with them their sports provision and they worked with our public health team to widen their sports offer, they were only more than too keen. I'm very proud to support these people, and obviously I have the expert advice of officers who have provided me with numbers to ensure that our support is targeted about how they are working. And I'm clear, I'm not just a cheerleader for the council. So I discussed with them the capacity issues they are experiencing. I've asked my director to do a review of our reablement service, which manages people out of hospital, and a review of our system, how we triage our own people going into the hospital, to ensure that we are working for the hospital in the best way possible. So I gave them that reassurance. I'm not just a cheerleader for the council, but we will work with them to see how we can streamline and always increase our partnership working. So the answer to your question, Councillor Collins, is much improved. There are operating deficits that are concerning, but we are engaging with them in every possible way to help address these and address them in a systematic transformational way.
Councillor Snell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I suppose also thank you for the report, James. It was very well written. And no, seriously, it was very well written. And you find yourself asking yourself questions, and then James goes and answers them in the paper. So that's excellent. Thank you very much for that. It's good that you're refocusing on the way things are done. One of the things we found out at POS recently was that we were spending close to £500,000 on smoking cessation for adults, and we were, I think, halting the smoking at about 3% of the adult smoking population, which was money vastly badly spent. And I see that James can have a try and refocus some of that to focus on children and get them to start, or not start in the first place, which is a far better way of spending money. But going to the Essex success regime and the sustainability transformation plans. Now, we all know that these have been put in place because of the chronic overspend of the health services in Essex. So that does mean that over the course of time, there are going to be some changes in the way that healthcare is provided in this borough particularly. Can you assure me that one of the big problems that we've had in the past is that the communication hasn't been great, and that people, when things are going to change, that we actually get the communication right and make people aware? Because nothing makes people quite so anxious as reading about changes to their health provision, which is always a problem. And also, if there is any move to move some of our acute care facilities specifically, that is only done on clinical grounds, not just because somebody wants to grab some of our services to make a financial savings somewhere else. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First, thank you for your kind comments, Councillor Snell. First of all, on smoking, you'll see on the bottom of page 72, we will shift resources from tobacco control away from chasing meaningless 4-week smoking targets, completely arbitrary, changing the consenting lifestyle of an adult, I think is a wasted endeavour. Obviously, we'll support people who actively come to us and say, I want to change this aspect of my lifestyle, but we're no longer going to be throwing money away when it could be retargeted at early years, which we're doing. In terms of engagement, following dialogue with the engagement panel that is a part of the Health and Wellbeing Board, I signed a letter this afternoon to Andy Bowles, who sits in the NHS and is responsible for the success regime, to underline our extreme displeasure with how some consultations have been carried out and the requirements that they have to discuss with us. Because they have to remember, the STP will not be successful if they don't have local government buy-in, because most of the STP just talks about things that are outside of hospitals, so if they can't get decent buy-in from local government and from other partners, it won't be a success. I've made that point very forcefully to him in a letter. And in terms of moving acute care away, I can absolutely assure him that decisions will be made on a clinical basis. And that also means I won't be offering in principle objections to things moving. So when I went around Basel Hospital, the cardiac unit is a tremendous resource because that is where the expertise is focused. I think that's a very good model. We need to see more of these centres of excellence, and I will make sure that any conversation in that regard is always clinically driven.
Councillor Barbara Rice.
Thank you, Councillor Howden, for an excellent report. I have to just correct 2 points that have been asked and answered this evening, Madam Mayor. The first one is around the smoking cessation, which indeed is welcome now that we are targeting a different area. But I have to say that whilst I was portfolio holder, of course we endeavoured to look at every single contract that we had inherited from the PCT, and of course then the things were changed. So that's the reason that every contract is being looked at, because they are now coming to an end of those contracts and are able to be renegotiated in a much more efficient way. Thank you. So we've cleared that one up. The other thing around the weight management redesign, I have to point out the fact that the reason that the redesign happened was because the public health grant, Councillor Howden, as you well know, was slashed. And we had to have a look at budgets to look at weight management and also sexual health. And they were 2 of the things that did get slashed. So just 2 points there. But you may have thought that I was going to ask a lot of questions this evening, Councillor Howden, but I'm not. Because I read your report and was both surprised and pleased, but I can't really criticise the content of the health section, Madam Mayor, as it's a continuation of the portfolio that I set up with the officers. So I take the tribute you offer, Councillor Howden, to myself and other past cabinet members, and I do have a copy of my past report, which is very similar, and I commend that because I think it's wonderful that we've got continuity and we're not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, and indeed we're going to continue with the excellent work that I did as a portfolio holder.
Yeah.
So I'll take that tribute that you offer in your first page, James. And I'm going to watch the future carefully for some new developments, when you bring them forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rice. Obviously, it's always nice to see that you see the grassroots of some of the good work you did. Perhaps why other members don't see the same thing, speaks for itself. In terms of the smoking contracts from the PCT, obviously there was a change there. The PCT wasn't efficient, it was a centralised model. And it's right that we are continuing that work under myself. Obviously, now what we're doing is we're doing it in a far more intelligent way by bringing these services together with education, which is the correct way of doing it. In regards to the public health grant, Councillor Rice will remember at the time, I stood with her when I said it was unacceptable that not the public health grant was reduced, it was unacceptable that it was reduced in year. So budgets had already been set and then it was retrospectively changed. And I made that point quite clearly at the time. So I think I've always been consistent. And in regards to her wider points, there is a tribute on the first page of my report, because I don't own this office. I'm currently the occupier. People have come before me and people will come after me. I'm seeking to make my contribution while I can. And I think I'm off to a start.
Last question, Councillor Manning.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was heartened to hear Councillor Mrs Rice was in agreement with Councillor Holden's report, because she must therefore have changed her mind on grammar schools.
Madam Mayor, I said the health.
If I make you feel better, like Councillor Howden, I think a grammar school would be an asset to the borough. Now, I know he says in his report that meetings and negotiations are ongoing, but I'm hoping, as we don't have a full council next month, he could give us an early update on those negotiations and hopefully give us some encouragement that we will soon have a grammar school in the borough to serve our young people. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Manning. This is a pro-choice administration. I'm a pro-choice cabinet member. We are making sure that we are ready to take advantage of any opportunity that comes with bringing grammar school places to Thurrock. It would be appropriate to talk about individual negotiations. Suffice to say, there are a number of partners who are not just engaging with us, but are actively engaging with us. They've been sharing information with us, they've been sharing insight with us, so it is all very positive at the moment. Grammar schools do enable social mobility. We should reflect on the fact that we have for the second time in our history of the greatest nation on earth, we have a female Prime Minister. Mrs May was aided by two of the top things that enable social mobility, that is access to a grammar school education and membership of the Conservative Party.
There we are.
Councillor, please. Too exciting. Councillor Duffy, last question. Then calm down, Councillor.
It's on the same topic with grammar schools. I remember earlier in the year I was sat in the gallery with 4 years of council as well, Councillor Collins, applauding the motion when the council moved in pro-grammar school. Since then, we've had an education secretary, which I suppose is progress for the Tory party. We've gone from we will have no grammar school to I don't really want to take it off the table, but I don't agree with it. We've had some backsliding since that announcement. Can the portfolio holder member update me on are the Conservative Party going to U-turn again, follow the UKIP lead and deliver on policy announcement you promised would never happen under a Tory government?
Thank you very much, Councillor Duffin. Your tremendous ability to turn every comment on a commentary of the Conservative government, kind of actually the UKIP version of Councillor Rice. Purple Gerard.
Gerard? You've got a pretty
Suffice to say, any conversations that I have with ministerial colleagues are always enamoured about the benefits of grammar schools.
Thank you. We've overrun on that section, so Councillor Howden, can you sum up extremely briefly, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Simply to say that in the drafting of this report, and I can confirm that this report is actually version 17, I thank my extremely tolerant team who have been supporting me in the directorates, Roger Harris and Ian Wake in health, and Rory, and unfortunately Roger Everton isn't here this evening, who have done a tremendous job in supporting me. I'll simply say that after 6 years of opposition, that I'm in a position where I was born in Ulster Hospital 26 years ago. I was educated in Stamford and Corringham before being educated in Grays. To get the opportunity to serve as Cabinet Member for Education and Health is an opportunity that I absolutely relish, and I'm going to give it my absolute all.
Yeah.